Hi friends. As you know, I went for more than 2 years without signing into social media, and I want to talk a bit about that and talk about why I went for more than 2 years without signing in and why I'm signing in now. To tell you the truth, I'll save the why I'm signing in now for a video that I'm gonna put out in the future, but there are several reasons why I didn't sign in for over 2 years, and each one is worth its own video. So here's the first one. And before I begin, I just need to remind everybody that I'm not presenting anything that I'm saying as being some kind of universal fact. I mean, one of the reasons that I didn't sign in to social media for more than 2 years was because there's so many people on it saying all kinds of things that they're trying, trying to pass off as being universal fact. And in some cases it's not, and it causes all kinds of harm. And, I don't want to be one of those people. I didn't want to see it or have anything to do with it. That was one of the main reasons why I didn't sign in for more than 2 years. So I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to be one of those people. I'm not trying to pass off anything that I'm saying as universal fact. Everything I'm saying here is just from my own personal experience and my own personal opinion, and that's it. And I'm not trying to pretend that it's anything but that. Another thing that I have to remind everybody about is that I'm not shaming anybody for using social media or enjoying social media. And in fact, I'm not telling anybody not to use social media. And another thing I need to remind people about is, I'm just not attacking anyone or anything in general. I'm just talking about a choice that I made that I have the right to make. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not attacking anybody. I need to make it clear that I'm not trying to do anything that's going to cost anybody any money or any business. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to cost anybody any money or any business. Elliot Racine is not going to be single-handedly responsible for the fall of Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. And so everybody can just relax on that front. With that in mind, I do need to ask everybody who possibly can to start supporting me on patreon.com/Elliot Racine. I don't think that anybody's going to go after me for saying any of this stuff. I don't want anybody to go after me for saying any of this stuff. I don't plan for anybody to go after me for saying any of this stuff. I just need to be prepared if somebody does. And if you can support me on patreon.com/Elliot Racine, you can really help with that. So, I'm not at war with anybody, but if at some point there's someone who is just totally convinced that I am, and I'm in some situation that I need money to get out of, and if you think that what I'm doing here and what I'm saying here is important, please, please, please support me on patreon.com/Elliot Racine. Okay, so anyways, one of the reasons why I didn't sign into social media for more than 2 years is because, how do I say this? Speaking for me personally, in some ways it made reality seem less real. And I also noticed, I was able to see that it was doing that for people in the world around me. And I didn't appreciate it. Just speaking personally for myself, at the time that I stopped stopped signing in to social media. Oh, well, just to backtrack for a second, one thing that I want to remind everybody too is that um, I'm saying that I didn't sign into social media for 2 years. That's different than not using social media for 2 years. I definitely watched hours and hours of YouTube videos over those 2 years, and that is that's its own subject. I'll talk about that at some point. But anyways, getting back to the reality seeming less real thing. So in 2022, when I stopped signing in to social media, I was using it 2, sometimes 3 times a week. Or I should say I was signing in 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And why I was doing that is its whole own story. At some point, I'll make a video in which I go through my own personal history of social media use. But anyways, 2022, around the time, in springtime, around the time that I stopped signing into social media, I was signing in typically 2, sometimes 3 times a week. So typically what I would do is early in the week, I would sign in, I would check, all my notifications and messages and all that stuff. That would take sometimes a few hours. And then the next day, I would post whatever it was I needed to post that week. And then if I had more than one thing I needed to post in a week, then a couple days later, I would post whatever else I needed to post. So, in the grand scheme of things, I know that is not much social media use. I know that is far less than probably, at least what I'm imagining, average is. But still, during those, 4 or 5 days, well, okay, how do I start talking about this? Well, the thing about social media is that the thing about social media versus the real world is that in the real world is always changing. You never know what's going to happen. You have no control over who you're going to interact with. You only have so much control over what you're going to say, and you have zero control over what anybody else is going to say, and zero control about how anybody else is going to respond to what you say. And I mean, that's basically the complete opposite of what it's like on social media. When you're in your social media account, you curate that to be however you want it to be. It doesn't change the same way the real world changes. There's not that feeling of never knowing what's going to come next. I mean, for the most part, the only people that you want to be there are the people there. You have complete control over what you're going to say. You can plan it out before you say it. A lot of times you can even edit it after you say it. To a certain degree, you have control over who can say what to you. You can delete comments, block people, all that stuff. When you're using social media, when you're signed into social media in your account, your social media account is something that you have control over in a way that you don't over the real world. And it's something that, at least compared to the real world, is always the same. The real world's always changing. Your social media account is, for the most part, always the same. And so something that I noticed, even when I was only signing into social media 2, maybe 3 times a week, is, because the world in my social media accounts was so constant, it in certain ways started to seem more real than the real world. It's like, all this stuff happens in the real world that's never the same and sometimes contradicting itself, but that none of that, or very little of that, or functionally none of that is going on in my social media accounts. And so even though intellectually I know the difference between the real world and social media, as far as my thoughts and knowledge goes, I know the difference. But emotionally, I noticed myself looking forward to signing in, over those 5 days, 4 days that I wasn't. And emotionally, kind of thinking about it as if it were in certain ways more real than reality, because of what I said about, reality is always changing, this is always constant. And it just, on kind of an emotional primal level, it kind of starts to register as being more real. And so it's like, okay, you know intellectually I know the difference, but sometimes the heart and the mind, the heart and the mind do this dance with each other, and sometimes they're in step and sometimes they're not. And in that case, my heart and my mind were not in step. My mind knew one thing, but my heart had another idea. And I didn't like that for myself, of course. I didn't like living that way. And after I stopped signing in for a few months, after I stopped signing in for about 3 months, I started to notice all kinds of changes. One of the most notable was that I noticed that when I performed and people complimented me right there in the space that I performed at, right after my performance, those compliments meant so much more. Even if they were just very simple, very generic kinds of compliments, just like good job or something like that. Because the thing is, when somebody gives you a compliment in real life, in person, right in front of you, even if what they say is just very simple and basic, like good job, so much of our communication as human beings is beyond verbal. It's like they might just be saying good job, but their body language, what they're doing with their eyes, etc., tone, all that stuff, it can be communicating way more than just those couple words that you might not have to think too hard to say. And a lot of that is lost, of course, when it's just excuse me, I have something in my throat. A lot of that is lost when it's just coming through as a comment on a post in social media. And also another reason why those real life compliments started to mean much more than when I was signing into social media, even minimally, is because likes and comments and things on your social media posts, those are quantifiable. You can count them. You can be like, oh, people like what I'm doing this much. And then the whole thing about the consistency of social media world, making it look like it's actually more real than the real world, all that together made it so when I was signing into social media on a regular basis, even if it was just a few times a week, the compliments that I received in real life didn't mean as much to me. And then when I hadn't signed in to social media for a few months, those compliments that I received in real life started to mean a whole lot more. They started to mean so much more. And one of the reasons why, so when I stopped signing in to social media, I wasn't planning to stop for over 2 years. I didn't sit down. I was like, okay, I'm not signing in. How long am I going to not sign in for? I just got to a point where I was like, for so many reasons, one of which I'm talking about, more of which I will talk about, I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this for a while. I don't know how long, but I just can't do this for a while. And so when I got to about that 3 month mark, that's when, you know, a lot of things inside me really started to change. And that was one of those things that changed, that I really noticed. Like, oh, when I receive compliments for my music in real life, they mean so much more to me than they did before I stopped signing into social media. And you know, it gave me this feeling like I don't want that to stop. You know, I don't want that. I don't want to go back to feeling like compliments I receive in real life aren't as important as they really are. And that was something that I held on to for over 2 years. And the way I held on to it was by not signing in. So, I mean, you know, that's just me. That's just something that went on with me. But I also saw a lot of the same things going on with the people around me. And, like I said, I mean, me personally, just for whatever reasons, I was able to intellectually tell the difference between my reality on social media and my reality in real life. I intellectually knew that, and I intellectually understood, my different emotional response to it. But the thing is that there's so many people in the world who aren't going to know that. And it has nothing to do with how smart or stupid they are. It has nothing, or it could potentially at least have nothing to do with how smart or stupid they are. It could potentially have nothing to do with where they went to school, or did they go to school, or did they not go to school. There's just so many reasons why someone who's smart or stupid or educated or not educated could potentially not understand the difference between the reality on social media and the reality in real life. And I didn't see the platforms that I was using, which are just kind of the major platforms. I didn't see the platforms that I was using do anything to address that. And it really bothered me. And it made me not want to, at least not want to sign into those platforms. It was something that I didn't want to see. I didn't want to have anything to do with. I didn't want to be part of. And I just had to not look at it for a while. I just thought it was really irresponsible, and coming from a place of greed, and coming from a place of not just greed, but a place of trying to be God. It's like you're in control. If I would imagine that if I were the creator of something like Facebook or whatever, I could imagine that if I created this thing where it's like, here's the real world, here's real life, and then here's this alternate reality that I've created that everybody kind of curates for themselves, and everybody's living in these two realities at once, and I have complete control over one of them. I could imagine that would make me feel like God. And the thing about trying to feel like God, it's like, it's just a way to weasel out of being human. It's like human beings have so much pain and so much suffering. We have so much joy and so much wonder in our lives and magic, but along with that comes a ton of pain and suffering and all kinds of things that are really unfair. And if you're God, you don't have to deal with any of that. And I don't know, I just felt like I was contributing to this thing where it was this thing that was there to like prop a few people up and make them feel like God and make a few people rich while everyone else in the world was suffering. And it was really coming at all of our expense. It was coming at my expense. It was coming at the expense of everybody around me. And it just felt horrible. And I had to not do it until, well, I'll get into more detail on all of this, until I got to a point where I basically felt like I had no choice, but it's kind of like, all right, if I have no choice about doing this, I'm going to say something about it. And that's where I am now. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't signed into social media in more than 2 years. And just a reminder to everybody, real life reality is always going to be more real than anything on social media. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.